Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm really happy to have a very special guest with us. He's one of the pioneers of the FinOps industry with over 7 years of experience with FinOps. On his free time, he likes to play video games, which is pretty cool. And he's the Director of Cloud FinOps and Capacity Management at Comcast. I'm happy to welcome Chase Bennett. Chase, how are you today?
Hey, Alon, thanks for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Really excited for this.
We're really happy to have you. And please share with us, Chase, what do you think should be the FinOps practitioner's top priority?
Top priority for FinOps practitioner. I thought about this a lot too, and I think building trust within your community of folks that you work with. Like your platform engineers, your finance teams, whoever it may be. I think building that trust and building a reputation there is really important. We spend a lot of time with these folks, and it's important to build those good relationships and remind people that we're here to help, right? It's a big part of what we do. So is the engagement piece. Of course, there's a lot of data analytics and reporting up to management and ensuring that they understand what the targets are and what's going on and getting charged back right and all of this stuff that we do, the gamut of things that we do in the FinOps space. But, in order to make all of that successful, Elon, I think that building those relationships with the people that you're engaging with is paramount, and it's at the core of every single one of those functions. So I really can't recommend that enough. Get to know the people you work with, get to understand what their priorities are, what their objectives are, how they tick, what motivates them, right? It's different for everyone, and people is a whole practice in and of itself, right? So I'd say focus there. That should be a top priority for sure.
That's actually very interesting because you could have focused on a specific role or responsibility of a FinOps practitioner, but you actually chose something very fundamental around how you work with other people. And I'm curious, was there any experience in your past that led you to this insight? Maybe an situation where there was no trust and things failed, or there was trust and things worked very well?
I've seen both situations, as a consultant in my past, helping folks build cost models. It wasn't necessarily FinOps at the time, but it was something that we were doing, and it's in a very similar vein. Coming into other companies and seeing them kind of start this up, there's often a lot of pushback. Sometimes relationships are rocky with that specific team and finance or things like that. And that can make things really difficult. So, establishing that trust is really important. I mean, people are going to sort of, maybe doubt what you're doing or doubt your logic or doubt your numbers. Is this right? Is this accurate? Did you think about this? Think about that? And the more that you start to explain that from a technical perspective, absolutely, and of course helps. But the more that they understand that, hey, I'm not here to take money away from you. I'm here to, sort of help, build something that makes sense for all of us. So, you build that trust. And in order to get people to use your products, because at the end of the day, we own the product of FinOps within our organizations. So in order to get traction with that, you have to build trust with the tool that you're using, the data that you're bringing to the conversation, the recommendations that you're making, all of the things, because it's very easy for people to get distracted. Everyone's got their own priorities. They've got their own things that they need to focus on, and you don't want to get written off, right? So that's sort of why I went that direction. I think I have seen issues with that in the past, and been there to sort of help bridge the gap, and build those relationships from the ground up. And I've seen a lot of success with that. So,
And where do you see the biggest challenge with building trust with finance, or building trust with engineers, or with executives, or with other people in the organization?
I think I'll start with engineers, right? Because this is as I'm sure we both know, right? Like state of FinOps reports over the years, like what's always at the top of that list, right? Getting engineers to take action. And I know that can sound harsh, but it is a harsh reality, and I think that there's a lot of ways to go about that, and I've seen people try different strategies there, and like the biggest mistake I think that you can make and building trust with your engineers is telling them how to do their job. Like we all have a sense of duty, right? We have a sense of responsibility to to the FinOps organization, to our team. We want to drive success, right? But if you come in and you're like, hey, here's all the things that you're doing wrong, like you're going to really struggle to get traction there. And the way that I like to take situations like that is go, here's what I'm seeing on paper, right? Like here is what the recommendation is that I'm seeing from my perspective. But what I don't have is your side of the story, right? So tell me about it. Like, I see all these, idle EC2 instances, running at 1% utilization. To me, it looks like you could turn these off, right? What are your thoughts? So I'm coming at it in a collaborative way rather than an accusatory way, right? And I think that resonates well because it's disarming. I'm there to have a conversation. I'm not there to tell them what to do. And I found a lot of success with that personally.
Sounds like a very good tips. And what about the other side of the story with finance, for example? How do you build trust with finance?
Yeah. I almost want to facetiously say, make sure that your chargeback matches what the bills are that are actually coming in. And I mean that in a funny way, but in a real way, like, I think the biggest thing with finance is that it is accuracy. From my experience, right? I don't know if you've experienced something different or if the other folks listening in have thought. Let us know your ideas. I'd be interested, right? But I go to accuracy. I think that finance is very keen on that, and it goes back to the trust feature, right? Like, what does tool A say $1 million, and Cost Explorer over here is telling me 980 or whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's $100 and sometimes it's $10,000, and sometimes that number matters to your organization. So again, we're going full circle, right? Know your audience and understand what motivates them, what's important to them. So I think those are the challenges you see with finance a lot is ensuring that there's accuracy in the data that you're reporting.
And Chase, I can tell you that my dad is a CFO, my mom is an economist, and I have similar experiences. So to me, it's totally makes sense. And yes, and do you see yourself also as some kind of proxy between finance or engineering, or you perceive your job in a different way?
Absolutely. And I think that is something that is really key, is understanding and defining those roles and responsibilities, right? Especially within FinOps. Deviating a little bit, but you kind of led me there, so I'm going to go with it. Like what is, and this answer could be different depending on your organization, your company culture, where you are. Like FinOps in so many ways is still the Wild West, Alon. Like, you're going to get a different answer from a lot of different people you talk to. From my experience and from what I have seen work and the companies that I've worked for or the folks that I've spoken with is, finance your traditional FP&A role over here. And sometimes they're responsible for the budget forecast. Sometimes that falls within FinOps. And the engineers obviously are going to be taking the actions, like you're coming up with the recommendations within FinOps. But, for liability reasons, right, like you don't want to go into a platform engineer's environment and turn stuff off on behalf of them, right? Then again, company culture, right? Like, it may differ and different things may work for different folks. I can't stress that enough. But know what the roles and responsibilities are between finance, FinOps, and your engineers. And your cloud architects as well, right? Because they play a pivotal role. Governance, strategy, tagging, like oftentimes that falls within FinOps. Other times it falls within your cloud architecture group. And sometimes it falls within both. So build that delineation and understand it and make sure that your organization understands it. Socialize that so that people know what your function is. I often stress that we are not finance, and we don't want to be, because I want to help build that trust. I don't want to take your dollars away. I'm not here to lower your budget or ensure that you are within budget. To me, that's finance's job. I'm here to help you find a lever to pull. I'm here to help you reinvest your public cloud spend in that pet project that you want to go after, right? Like, that's how I build trust. I look for ways to help you meet your targets, right? But I'm not the stick. I'm the carrot, and that's what typically works for me. And I think that, again, both strategies can work differently for different organizations, but that's the way that I view it. And maybe I'm just a better good cop than a bad cop, to be honest with you. So,
Yes, it's actually very interesting because you're actually talking about how the FinOps is also perceived in the organization. And I actually want to lean into your 7 years of experience and ask you if you've seen any change over the years with how FinOps is being perceived in the organization.
how it's being perceived and how it's changed. I think that the part that I can mostly speak to is how important we are to an organization, and something that I think the FinOps Foundation and all of the different vendors in the FinOps space have been trying to tell us for years, right? Like that this is a pivotal function within a cloud engineering organization, right? Like there is material savings to be had here, and in a world where we're going through a lot of tech layoffs and we're seeing a lot of heads get cut. When there's a lot of public cloud waste out there, I love to compare the two because, everyone's got to eat at the end of the day, and it's really sad to see, a lot of friends and family members over the years, get let go, knowing that there's probably a lot of cloud opportunity out there, right? Like, if I can save you, $500,000 in public cloud spend over a year, like maybe that saves somebody's job. And I think that leadership is starting to realize that more and more, and it's something that I'll continue to preach, right? Like, um, I just think that it's disappointing to see it go the other way sometimes, right? Like when we could avoid these things. So I do think I've seen a shift, right? Like at least in my organizations, I know that like we've just grown more and more important to the business, and that lever that could be pulled that I talked about is getting more and more attention. Hey, like look here, right? Try this. Um, you know, budget or whatever else is coming up at some point, right? So how do we, leverage this type thing?
Absolutely. And I can tell you that even from my experience, as I see as FinOps practitioners become more and more leaders in the organization. So they're leading a cultural change, they're leading new processes, they're implementing even new technologies. And in many ways, the goal of this podcast is to give these leaders a voice because they have a vision. They have a way they think the organization should behave and look at efficiency in a certain way. And I can totally relate, and I experience the same thing from my perspective as well. And something that is really interesting, Chase, as we talk, it sounds like you have a very mature perspective on the impact of FinOps on the business. So one, you mentioned, if you become efficient, you have more budget or more resources to spend on innovation, for example. And you also talked about how if we save on cloud, we can help keep the jobs of other people instead of doing, big layoffs. I wonder, like, if you have more perspective about the impact of FinOps of the business on these points or other points as well.
We think. I like those are the big things that come to mind, of course, right? But I think cloud strategy is a big one that organizations and apologies if this isn't where you were trying to go with this, but I think cloud strategy is a big thing that we play a pivotal role in, right? Like our leadership is constantly driving business decisions that are very material and change, right? Like, are we taking a hybrid cloud strategy? Are we going public cloud? Are we completely modernizing, getting out of our data centers? Are we repatriating? Are we pulling public cloud spend back into private cloud because, we think we can run it cheaper, et cetera? Like, give your leadership the tools to make the right decisions there, right? And the reality in a lot of cases is that what is right depends on the organization that you are in and the data that supports that, the evidence that supports that. I've worked at organizations where they're like, we're going to move entirely to public cloud. I've worked in organizations that private cloud is the best thing since sliced bread, and we've got more control there, and we need to reduce um, our OpEx spend, and we can't capitalize, right? Like things like that. And I think all of that is up for debate in so many ways, and both situations, and you should have that healthy debate. But you should provide the evidence that suggests what the best strategy is to your organization. So, help your leaders make the right decisions with the data that you have at your fingertips. So, we're here to tell a story, as well as get that savings and ensure the chargeback is accurate, and build strategy and governance. Like we're here to tell a story and to help our leadership understand that. So,
And basically have a huge impact on the strategy of the company from technology perspective. That's really important.
yeah, for sure.
And Chase, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Comcast, huge company. I have no idea how big is your cloud infrastructure, but I'm sure it's absolutely huge. What do you think is the biggest challenge when doing FinOps in such a big environment?
Yeah, totally fair question. I've worked at a lot of, mid-sized companies, and Comcast is a very large organization. When you're trying to find ownership and you're trying to find the right person to engage with, like, you find an account that's got a lot of savings opportunity. You get past your low-hanging fruit, you get the message out there, you get people sort of tractioned to FinOps. But then there's always these accounts, these resources, et cetera, that you're trying to figure out who owns it. And it's really the sprawl, right? It's a very wide organization. So, trying to figure out who owns what sometimes can be the challenge, but, it's something that, I'm really thankful to my team and the folks that I work with who recognize that that's, an important challenge that we need to tackle. And it's, I'm thankful for the group there to prioritize that and to help us figure out where we need to go. So it's a lot of friendly people, and I'll say to the audience as well, right? Like if you end up in a situation like that, just ask. Like find people that care, find people that are going to help you. Again, build your network, build your trust. Alon, you might not own this account, but like I see you're in this organization. Can you point me in the right direction? And you might say like, Chase, I don't know who owns that specific account, but it looks like it comes out of this micro organization, right? So start here and just chase, right? Chase it down. So that's a Chase joke for you.
Exactly, and sounds like definitely a decent challenge. And Chase, would you say that the smaller the organization here or the smaller the cloud footprint you have, the more you focus on technical challenges, and the bigger the infrastructure or org is, the more you focused on organizational challenges or processes?
In my experience, that's fair to say. But again, I think that everyone experiences unique challenges, which is what makes this community so valuable, right? Like, and I'm just going to plug, like, if you're not involved in the FinOps community, like, get involved. Find some friends, like that's like what we're doing here today. Like, this is what it's all about. Like, understand what other pain points people have and what they're experiencing, because, I might talk to another Fortune 100 company. It's a massive organization and their challenges might be completely different. And I might be able to help them because I'm not experienced those challenges, or maybe I've overcome them, and absolutely vice versa, right? This is where I get a lot of my strategy. Like my understanding is, watching recordings, conferences, where people are talking about this. Like, just this week, I was watching videos on like Kubernetes cost optimization and trying to understand like what the best practices are there and what people are gravitating toward, right? Like there's the industry standard, but there's what people are doing in practice. And I think that's really, really important to understand. So, yes, I do think that those are the challenges that I've experienced with small and large companies, but I do think that it can vary, right? And something to call out with like smaller companies too is a lot of people think like, oh, smaller cloud footprint, like easier to control, easier to manage. Well, that means the variance that you're going to be off is so much more tight, right? The $100 extra can make a difference. The $10,000 extra can make a difference, right? And not to say that it doesn't in the larger organizations, but $10,000 to a, $500 million public cloud footprint is very different than it is to a $75 million cloud footprint, right? So, those are the things that you need to keep in mind and realize that those are the challenges that come. You might know who to go to, but, the variance might be bigger. So,
And I say plus one to get involved in the community. I will also mention I've worked in other industries in the past, and the films community is one of the most open and transparent and collaborative I've ever been to. So absolutely talk to peers, get involved. You'll get a lot out of it. And Chase, you made a very interesting move, moving from vendor side to the practitioner side. So you mentioned you started with Aptio and Cloudability, and then you move to the practitioner side to be a FinOps practitioner. How is it different? Do you miss a bit the days of being on the vendor side?
yeah, I mean, for sure, there's there are no bad experiences in life, right? We can be thankful for all of them and for different reasons, right? Why did I do it? I'll start there and say, I was getting one side of the picture of what I was doing, right? Like I was helping customers that are going, what is this? And how do I do this? Build from the ground up. And after I had done that numerous times, I wanted to move into, okay, now how do we mature it? How do we run it? How do we move from crawl to walk to run and refine and be successful and land the plane like within the organization? So, curiosity is what led me to, move away from the vendor side and into this space. But I'm always like seeking the next nugget of knowledge, and there's so much to learn on both sides of it. Of course, I miss it. Like it's fun engaging with customers, understanding their problems, and going like, I know that challenge, and I know how to solve for that. Or at least like from my experience, I've been able to, right? Like yours might be different. Like let's figure out the nuance, right? But like that gets me excited to solve those problems and to see those customers be successful, right? But yeah. I think wherever you can get involved, like get involved. It's like you said, Alon, the community is so helpful. They're so willing to talk to you and understand your challenges, to talk about theirs. It's just the community here is what I'm so thankful for. It's what makes me look forward to work on a Monday is engaging with other folks within the community.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And Chase, let's move from talking about FinOps to talking about Chase Bennett a bit.
Sure.
So first of all, today you live in Seattle.
Yes. Most recently, actually, I was in Orlando, Florida. For much of my adult life, I've lived in Brooklyn for a little bit. I've lived in Raleigh, right outside of DC. So all up and down the East Coast. This is my first experience on the West Coast. We landed here right at the end of December. So we're 2 months in. But yeah, just excited to kind of check out all of the things the Pacific Northwest has to offer, from food to hiking to just beautiful nature and all of that good stuff. So
And missing the Florida winters.
yeah, I do joke that I moved at the best time to be in Florida and maybe the worst time to be in Washington. The honeymoon phase of being in a new area and like having all of this new cuisine and like new sights to see is really helping me along, right? Like spending most of my time in Florida of my life, I'm very used to sunlight, right, and not very used to snow. But man, it's beautiful. It's awesome to see. So I'm loving that.
And you went to university in Florida, correct?
Yes, UCF, University of Central Florida, go Knights. So it's a great university, really big in software engineering as well, and their College of Engineering Computer Science. People sleep on it, I think, but we have a lot of great professors there. When I was in college, like the ACM team would like always, I think that year we came in like second in state to like MIT or something like that, which was like, and I don't know, someone can fact check me on that because but yeah, I was, it made me really proud to go to there, to go to that school. So I am a proud Knight to this day.
And if I take you to your first day in university, what advice would you give Chase Bennett of that day?
Oh man. Figure out what you want to do. You know, like enjoy it, live in that moment because those are some of the best moments of your life in college. But figure out like what you want to focus in on. You know, I chose IT, so my major was information technology. What a broad field, right? You know, you could be a network engineer, you can go into software engineering, cybersecurity, identity. There's so many things within the field of IT. So, you know, figure out what you want to gravitate towards, figure out what you like to do, and what interests you, because you might be doing it for a long time. And on the flip side, I'll say that, like, you know, that is some of the beauty of it is that, you know, if you ever get into something you're not really feeling, there's a lot of horizontal fields within IT that you can get into, such as FinOps, right? Like where I ended up, and like I love what I do, right? But I didn't always do FinOps. I started as like a SharePoint admin, believe it or not.
Wow.
You know, there's just there's a lot of jobs out there that you know fit the range of IT. So find your specialty, you know, build some breadth, but find your depth, you know, and balance the two.
Absolutely. And we mentioned in the beginning that you're into video games. So any games in specific?
Oh man, this is probably the most embarrassing one to admit, but I spend a lot of time playing WoW Classic, World of Warcraft. You know, my favorite game of all time is right up here behind me is Metal Gear Solid. It's a great story. So I'm always going back and playing like games from my childhood, and I've got like a retro handheld that I love to play with, and you know, using the Go and stuff like that. But you know, we talked a lot about community today, and I think for me, this is how my friends and I stay in touch, and this really birthed a lot during COVID, or really came to its peak during COVID, I should say. You know, we all get online at night, and we all hang out. This is where we catch up. You know, I've got friends in Colorado and New Jersey, you know, Texas, basically like across the United States, and even some global friends, right? Like this is how we get together and find a way to catch up, and sort of our escape from reality. At the end of the day is to go relax and hang out and, you know, yeah, spend some time together. So
Very nice, very nice. And you play some games from your years as a teenager as well?
yeah. Metal Gear Solid. When did that come out? I think it was like 97 or 98. I'm part of a, it's kind of like a, you know, like people talk a lot about like book clubs, but I'm part of an online game club. And what they do is they basically every month they come out with like a game, you know, from some point in time. So we just passed Lunar New Year. It's Year of the Snake. So the game of the month is Metal Gear Solid, Solid Snake. That's kind of why that's at the top of the brain right now. But yeah, love going back and playing, you know, Mario, Donkey Kong, like all the old Super Nintendo classics and stuff like that. So we could do a whole podcast just on gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really make me want to play again Heroes 3. That was my favorite game
Oh,
as
nice.
I grew up. Yes, yes,
That's
a bit
awesome.
geeky, but I really enjoyed it.
Hey, I totally get it. Everyone's got something different, and you know, there's just that's the beauty about the like even the retro gaming community is that like you know whether it's Fire Emblem or it's Metal Gear or Final Fantasy or Mario or you know name insert genre of type of game, you know, somebody has some sort of unique experience that they feel that nostalgia with and that they gravitate back to, and that's their comfort space, and everyone deserves that. So
That's great. So, Chase, any last words to our listeners before we sum things up?
yeah, I guess just you know, in summary, remember that you know, focus on building those good relationships. If you're new to the community, been in the community for a while, you know, something to think about there. But also, look, remind people that you're here to help. Most importantly, you know, we're a lever to pull. We're a resource for you to use within your organization, and build that trust, build those good relationships, and reach out. Like you are not alone. I think that's probably the most important thing I could say is you are not alone in your FinOps journey. Reach out to me, reach out to Alon, right? reach out to others within the community. Like we want to hear your story. We want to hear your challenges, and we want to help. Because that's what makes us happy. That's what gives us gratification as well, is knowing that we can help others. So, if you're an experienced FinOps practitioner or leader in the industry, offer your advice, pay it forward, right? Like think about the folks that have helped you in your career and how you can help others, and realize that there's a lot of reward in that. So yeah, I encourage everyone to meet somebody new within the community and talk to somebody, have a conversation, and or just reach out and say hello. Build a network.
That's really powerful. And Chase, thank you so much for sharing your experience and joining our podcast.
Absolutely, Lon. Anytime. This was an absolute pleasure and a really fun activity. So thanks again for having me.
Great. And I would like also to thank our listeners for joining us again. If you had fun, you learned something new, please share it with your friend and spread the word. Chase, thank you again. That was another episode of FinOps in Action. See you later. That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action.